Hey guys, this is EJ Holland with the Wolverine.com, and we're back with another Wolverine live recruiting show here exclusively on our YouTube channel. We are at 22.5 thousand subscribers. We want to get to 23, so make sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is completely free. We do this every Wednesday to answer your questions. We have plenty of other shows on the YouTube channel. Obviously, football season right around the corner, so make sure to like this video and subscribe to see all our other YouTube content. Also, now is the perfect time to subscribe to the Wolverine.com. You can get an annual subscription for $99.99 for a year or $9.99 for a month. That gets you premium insider recruiting information, team information, basketball recruiting, NIL, transfer portal, and so much more. Plus, you get to be part of a great message board community over on the fort with more than 8,000 unique individual users. Join the discussion today. Get the latest on Michigan football ahead of the season and everything Michigan recruiting as well over at the Wolverine.com. All right, guys, it is the Wednesday show, which means I am answering all questions. If you want to leave a super chat, you can hit that little box with the dollar symbol that allows you to skip the line, ensures your question will get answered. And also, that money goes directly to our travel budget as we gear up to see top recruits across the country this fall. But we already have our first question from Jeff M, who was in the chat at 2:40 p.m. So shout out to Jeff M for being online so early. And like I said, guys, feel free to get your questions in now. Um, Jeff says, of the high school players you have evaluated in your 10 years on the beat, which ones did you think would or will have the best college career? Start with the offense. So I actually have been on the Michigan beat for only 4 years. So I have not been here for a decade. I have been covering recruiting for 12 years since 2011 when I was a student at SMU. So spent 4.5 years covering Texas, and am coming up on that here on the Michigan beat. Let's talk a little bit about this question. So I'm only going to stick with guys that I covered at Michigan, unless you guys want me to talk about guys that didn't. But since this is a Michigan show, we'll stick with the Michigan guys. So quarterback was obviously JJ McCarthy. He's by far the best quarterback that Michigan has recruited during my time on the beat. I mean, when I went out and saw JJ for the first time, and actually, funny story, when I saw JJ for the first time, I wasn't even on the Michigan beat yet. I was still on Texas. As an underclassman, Texas had brought him in for a visit for one of their junior days, and they hadn't offered him yet. And at the time, I was very closed off. I was definitely a Texas snob, being from the great state of Texas, where the best high school football is played. And I remember telling my coworker, I was like, "Why they bring this kid in from Chicago? Like, do they even play football in Chicago? Why are they recruiting a Chicago kid when there is an abundance of talent at the quarterback position in Texas?" And then my coworker was like, "I don't know, man. I don't know anything about this kid." And then he went and watched JJ's tape, and he was like, "Dude, you have to see that Chicago kid's tape." And I went back and I watched the Chicago kid's tape, and I ended up talking to Texas quarterbacks coach at the time, and I was like, "Man, that JJ McCarthy kid's really good." And so I saw him when I was in Austin because Texas actually lets you cover their junior day events and stuff. You can be on campus for their recruiting stuff, which Michigan doesn't allow you to do, which is a whole different topic for a different show. But anyway, I had a chance to meet JJ there, and obviously when I moved to Chicago to cover Michigan, I spent a lot of time around him. And man, before you even talk about JJ as a player, just JJ as a kid, I guess he's a man now, but JJ as a kid is what I always think of him as. He was just one of the best dudes you'll ever meet, man. I mean, extremely respectful, just a really high character kid, a supreme leader. And I think everybody that watches Michigan football has had a chance to see JJ really grow as a person and really see what makes him so charismatic and loved by not only the community but his teammates. I think JJ's the total package off the field. And on the field, I mean, you see the excitement. When he was in high school, I likened him to Johnny Manziel just because of his ability to create, his escapability in the pocket, and just unreal arm strength as well. So JJ will always be one of my favorite recruits of all time. So definitely JJ at the quarterback spot, not even a close second. Running backs. Running backs have been interesting during my time on the Michigan beat. Obviously, the easy answer here is Donovan Edwards. Donovan was also one of my favorite recruits of all time. And, kind of funny thing with Donovan, I saw Donovan as a junior at West Bloomfield, and I wasn't sold on him, man. I wasn't super high. I didn't give Donovan a real glowing review as an underclassman. Then that off season, I remember going to a West Bloomfield workout and being like, "Man, this kid looks like a completely different guy." And then I went back like 2 or 3 times throughout the off season, and Ron Bellamy was the head coach at the time, and he basically had an open door policy. And I got to know Don really, really well, obviously, to the point where at the end of the process, he was only giving me interviews. So shout out to Don for that. But the more I saw Donovan, the more I was like, man, this kid is going to be the real deal. Like he just improved so much. The jump he made from junior year to senior year was fantastic. One of the better jumps I've seen from a recruit. And don't get me wrong, I thought Donovan was a really good back as an underclassman, but not this elite 5-star level type guy. And by the time his senior year was over, I was fully on board with Donovan being that elite 5-star type guy. I mean, he was such a fantastic playmaker, so fun to watch as a senior. It was kind of unfair. He dominated games. He helped lead West Bloomfield to a state championship. I remember that playoff run. I remember in the freezing cold, it was like 15 degrees at Belleville, and just watching him run over guys and defeat the villain of Jermaine Crowell in that game. That's when I was like, man, Donovan's a 5-star all the way. But he was always a playmaker at wide receiver. He was always a great pass catcher out of the backfield. And I mean, I know Michigan fans haven't seen it too much yet, but at the high school level, he was a powerful runner between the tackles. Like he would run dudes over. So I envision that Donovan will be more of a tank this season. You'll actually get to see him run guys over. He can do that as well. But I think he has a lot of finesse to his game, obviously, and just a great kid as well. I mean, you see all the interviews, and he has kind of that goofy, deep voice, and I just love Donovan, man. He's always going to be one of my favorites. So as far as the second back, um, Michigan hasn't recruited an elite level back other than Donovan for a couple years. The first one being Jordan Marshall. So I'm a big Jordan Marshall fan in this cycle. I don't know him as well because I'm no longer living in the Midwest, but on tape, I mean, he's a really terrific back between the tackles. He's a guy that can ground and pound. I thought Michigan did a nice job of getting a compliment back in Capano, who brings a little bit more burst and speed. But I think Jordan Marshall has taken a step in the speed box. But he is known more as a powerful between the tackles runner. On three made him the number 2 running back in the country, the number 31 overall prospect nationally. So Jordan Marshall is definitely the easy answer at number 2. Then wide receivers. Um, well, this guy's not even on the Michigan roster anymore, but the first one that comes to mind is Xavier Worthy, obviously. I know that one probably hurts to hear, but I mean, I remember when Xavier Worthy was a 3-star on Rivals, and I watched his tape and I was like, "Oh my god, this guy's amazing." And I remember writing like Xavier Worthy's like a top guy, and he had like a little blurry image or not even a real picture on his Rivals profile for like forever. And yeah, I was always a Worthy fan just on tape. It was a COVID year, so I never actually got to see him play. But I went out to Fresno and spent some time at a private workout with his trainer, and I mean, I was full on board with Xavier Worthy, the football player. Now, Xavier Worthy, the kid, is a whole different story. He was not very fun to cover as a kid, but he was an amazing football player, and obviously he's one of the better wide receivers in college football heading into this year. Other receivers on the Michigan roster that I was super high on. Tyler Morris, I think is going to have a big year, whether it's this year or next year. I think he's finally going to have a breakout campaign at some point in the next 2 years. Tyler Morris was obviously JJ's teammate at Nazareth. Terrific kid, one of the best kids you'll ever meet as well. A lot of people forget that Tyler Morris, for the longest time, was a top 100 recruit, and he hasn't played football for a couple years. I mean, Chicago shut down during the pandemic, and he only played 4 game, or they only had a 4 game season when he was a junior, and he only played in, I believe, 3 games because he ended up tearing his ACL, so he missed his senior season. So this dude hasn't even played since his sophomore year of high school, which is crazy. But at the time when when Tyler Morris was at his peak as a sophomore, I mean, you could see the talent. I thought he reminded me a lot of Garrett Wilson, who I covered on the Texas beat. Really, really similar playing style. So if Tyler Morris is back to full health, then I think he's going to have a fantastic career at Michigan for sure. And last at wide receiver, ugh, um, I'm going to go with, man. Wide receivers just haven't been amazing, but I'm going to go with Darius Clemens. I know you haven't seen it yet, but he's just that big body wide receiver. Michigan still needs that, and I think he still has an opportunity to break out at some point. But I'd like Darius Clemens as a recruit. I'm a sucker for big receivers, and obviously he had great speed to go along with that. So if he can put it together, then maybe he can break out. Tight ends, Colson Loveland, easy one for me. I was always a big Colson Loveland fan. I remember landing in Boise and driving through the potato farms to go see Colson Loveland in Idaho, and it was so fun because they ran him in a wildcat package, and he was just dominant against these little farm kids in Idaho, and obviously he made a huge impact as a true freshman. So I think Colson Loveland's a guy that's really going to um, be one of the best tight ends in college football here down the line, if not this year. And I would say Deacon Tonielli is a guy I'm really excited about. Probably not one that Michigan fans would necessarily expect. But last cycle, I thought Tonielli was, a nice hidden gem in that class. He's a basketball kid that's still putting it together at the position, but really like his upside. I would say Deacon Tonielli as a sleeper. And then offensive lineman, geez. I'm just gonna go quickly through this because I've already feel like I've wasted a ton of time on this question. But 5 offensive linemen, Zach Zinter for sure. I had him graded as a top 100 recruit. I loved what he brought to the table. I think that Zach Zinter has made me look smart for sure because I was banging the drum on Zach Zinter for a long time. Um, Other offensive linemen that come to mind, this cycle, I'm really excited about Blake Frazier. I think he's going to be a fantastic prospect. He's more than just a legacy recruit. I think he's going to have a terrific career at Michigan. Amir Herring's a guy that a lot of people slept on. I think he's a future leader along that offensive line in this past cycle's class. He was one of my favorite kids to cover. I think if you look at another center type, Raheem Anderson is a guy that I was really high on. I know he hasn't seen the field yet either, but I think Raheem Anderson's a kid that really impressed me as a recruit, and I still think is going to have a really good career at Michigan. And then I know I'm blanking on guys along the offensive line. There's no way I'm uh, missing that many guys. I don't know. The for the fifth one, I would say, um, hmm, I don't know. I'm blanking for a fifth offensive lineman, but let's go ahead and move on to a different question. Let's go ahead and go to John A. Schultz. And he says, EJ, what skill guys, running back, wide receiver, and tight end in 25, does Michigan have an actual legit shot at landing? Not Ryan Wingo, long shot type of guys, but Jordan Marshall, who have an actual shot type of guys. And I mean, highly rated, high 4 stars and 5 stars. So I'll get back to you, John, real quick because that was going to bother me the whole show. So Andrew Gentry would be my fifth offensive lineman. I was very very high on him. Coming back from the mission is always tough, but I think he can live up to that top 100 billing he had as a recruit. I went out to Colorado and saw him twice, and he was an absolute monster. Let's go back to John's question. So again, which skill guys does Michigan have a good shot at landing? Let's go ahead and knock tight end out of the way because I was looking at the 25 tight ends today, and man, it is not a good year at tight end. It's actually a really bad year at tight end in 2025. If I were Michigan, I would only take one tight end. It's just not good. I think the guy that I would be most excited about um, as far as the 2025 tight ends would be Tiandre Waverly out of the Pacific Northwest. He's a guy that's in the on 300. He's 6'4", 215. He has really good track times. I believe he's a sub 11 guy in the 100 meter. So from an athleticism and upside standpoint, I would say Tiandre Waverly is a name you should get familiar with. With Michigan getting those schools from the pack, maybe they have a bigger presence out in the Pacific Northwest, specifically getting Washington. They finally were able to break through in the state of Washington, landing Hogan Hansen this cycle. So maybe they could make a move with Waverly. He has been on campus before, so yeah, Waverly would be a guy that I don't know why we ended up going to that question. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with that chat, but um, Waverly would probably be my guy at tight end. Wide receiver, I'd go the man in the thumbnail, Andrew Marsh, top 100 wideout out of Houston. And look, Michigan is struggling at the wide receiver spot, but Andrew Marsh, man, he's visited twice. He's a terrific kid. I talked to him on the phone last night, and he's just genuinely excited about Michigan. Even when I asked him about the Michigan offense being run heavy, he had a really good response saying he likes the system and believes he can come in and be a difference maker. You see the on-3 recruiting prediction machine, and it's definitely scary. Texas, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas A&M are all threats to keep him close to home. But Marsh is a high academic kid. His mom works at his high school, and I know he values what Michigan brings off the field. He told me he was really impressed with the culture and the atmosphere at Michigan. He's developed a great relationship with Ron Bellamy, and like I said, he's visited twice, and he's planning to visit for a third time for the game against Ohio State. So I mean, 3 visits from the number 3 wide receiver in the nation per on 3. I mean, that's big for Michigan. I don't think it's a Wingo situation where it's just a complete long shot. I think Andrew Marsh is actually considering Michigan. And if you can land Bryce Underwood at the quarterback position, I think that'll give him even more reason to take a serious look at the Wolverines. Um, at the running back spot, man, I don't know. There isn't a guy that's a real high 4 star or 5 star type that Michigan is super heavily involved with. I would say the highest rated back that's realistic is probably Iverson Howard out of Gaithersburg, Maryland. He goes to Quince Orchard in the DMV. Howard visited Michigan in the spring, told me Michigan was out in front when I had a chance to catch up with him at the Under Armour camp in Baltimore. Um, he's ranked low on the On3 industry ranking, just outside of the top 300, but On3 actually has him ranked as a top 150 recruit overall. I think Michigan gets him back on campus this fall and makes a move, but he's very realistic at the running back spot. He's ranked higher than fellow realistic target Justin Baker. So that's why I went with Iverson Howard. Let's go to Scott Knapp, and he says, Where will David Stone end up? I don't really know. I haven't been following that recruitment. It's not going to be Michigan, so have not been following that recruitment. So honestly, can't give a real answer there. Let's go to a message before I answer the next question. Let's go ahead and go to a message from one of our sponsors. It's the Get It or Regret It event going on August 3rd through the 12th at Lewis Jewelers in Ann Arbor. Once a year, Lewis Jewelers receives special permission to mark down selected designer items up to 50% off. Find designer brands that have been discontinued or closed out. Anniversary and wedding bands, diamond earrings, plus selected watches are all available. Look great and donate with a portion of the 10-day event going to the Humane Society of Huron Valley. For 10 days only, get it before you regret it at Lewis Jewelers. Support a great cause. If you love animals, if you have a pet like I do, I have a tortoiseshell cat that I love to death. You're going to want to support this cause. Go in there, get yourself one of these dog tags, get your wife some diamond earrings. You can even get your brother in law a gift of that dog tag, or get yourself the dog tag. And yeah, all of the, or 50%, I'm sorry, some of the proceeds go directly to the Humane Society. So it's a great cause to support. And the items are 50% off. So you definitely can't beat that deal and supporting your local humane society as well. And so that's Lewis Jewelers out in Ann Arbor. Make sure to give them a visit if you're in the area and get yourself some jewelry. All right, let's go to John A. Schultz. And he says, which nose tackles is Michigan going after in 2025? They need one after missing on their 24 nose targets. So, yeah, Michigan might circle back to some guys, or they might evaluate some late senior risers in the 2024 class. So I wouldn't rule out a nose addition this cycle. 2025 is kind of low on nose guys, man. A lot of three technique types. Um, Guy that comes to mind is Kevin Otis out of Mississippi. And when you think Mississippi, you definitely don't think a Michigan recruiting area. But he was on campus this summer. He's planning to return to campus for a game this fall. He's an on 300 prospect. He does have some SEC offers, but he's shown serious interest in what the Wolverines have to offer. Um, Dylan Battle out of Mansfield, Texas, 6'3", 315 pounds, is a guy that's definitely high on the board that fits the mold. He has yet to visit though, so not really sure how interested he is. Charles House out of Charlotte, North Carolina, at North Mecklenburg High School, Michigan's definitely had some success there. He's a three-star prospect, not ranked, but one the staff likes. So not super exciting on the nose front, but those guys are usually late bloomers, so we'll see who else pops up. Um, Mitchell M says, what happened to Michigan's recruiting momentum? Can they get any top guys this cycle, maybe committed elsewhere? Well, look, man, I mean, also with this cycle, you have to keep in mind Michigan's already at 27 commits. Like, how much more can they add? I think maybe they'll get to 30, 31, and it's probably going to be 28 tomorrow if Michigan seals the deal with Jeremiah Lowe, three-star cornerback out of Kentucky, set to make his decision. I think it's going to be Michigan. So if it's Michigan, that's 28. There aren't a lot of spots left. And Michigan still. So what is left? I guess is a better way to phrase the question. So let's say they get low tomorrow. They're at 28. Not a lot of wiggle room there. Gatlin Bear would have been 29, and he wouldn't have counted towards the class. But obviously, Gatlin Bear is no longer on the board as he committed to Boise State. Michigan still needs a wide receiver. So the options there right now are Ryan Wingo, who's a super long shot, 5-star wide receiver out of St. Louis. The more realistic shot is Nitro Tuggle, and he's committed to Georgia, but he is a teammate of cornerback commit Josiah Edmond. So Michigan is working to get its way back with Nitro Tuggle. They could take a 6 offensive lineman, but it has to be the right guy. Not a lot of names there. But as you can see here, Nitro Tuggle's profile just popped up on the screen. And somebody's actually asking, was that the real Nitro Tuggle yesterday? So Nitro Tuggle joined our recruiting show yesterday. apparently it was the real him. So, it looks like he does have high interest in Michigan. I mean, if you are looking for a guy committed elsewhere that's a highly touted recruit that Michigan can flip, then Nitro Tuggle is probably your guy, just with the connection to Josiah Edmond and the interest he's expressed lately, the willingness to make official visits to other places, but still a little worried about NIL with Nitro Tuggle. But like I was saying, a six offensive lineman is possible. It has to be the right guy. A nose is still possible, like I just mentioned. And Michigan definitely needs a safety this cycle. They have three in the secondary: Jacob Oden, who's more of a nickel, and the two corners, Jeremiah Lowe and Josiah Edmond. Again, assuming that Lowe commits to Michigan, they would have three. Um, so the fourth would have to be a safety, and the top guy on the board is definitely Zaquan Patterson, top 100 recruit out of Miami, Chaminade Madonna, same school as Chris Ewald. So, Patterson visited twice this summer, once in June, came back for the barbecue at the Big House. The Ewald connection is definitely helping out. Miami's the heavy leader when it comes to Patterson. You see a 91.3% chance of landing him, according to the On Three recruiting prediction machine. But Michigan's made up some ground. They've closed the gap. I wrote that there's definitely some optimism coming out of Ann Arbor following that barbecue visit. So he would definitely be a massive addition late. So that's probably what's left this cycle. There's another safety prospect to know in Sire Torrance, who's committed to Michigan State, but still to be determined if Michigan makes a move there. But yeah, not a lot left, man. I mean, there just aren't many spots left this cycle. I think you'll start to see the momentum turn into the 2025 class as the season gets underway and more guys get on campus. I think the barbecue at the Big House this year was a little bit of a dud, not necessarily from recruiting list standpoint. There were some highly touted recruits there. You had Andrew Marsh on campus, Bryce Underwood, David Sanders, but just the buzz coming out of the event wasn't super heavy. So maybe the season with Michigan poised to have a really good record gets them back on the right track as they pull ahead for 2025. Um, Funky Bunch 3 says, is Michigan actively pursuing Aaron Childs? No. So Aaron Childs, on 300 linebacker, committed to Florida, spurned Michigan during official visit season in June. Abruptly committed to Florida, canceled his Michigan OV. It does not appear that Michigan is still keeping tabs on him. I know that situation probably gave a lot of people around Michigan a sour taste in their mouth, but I would still pursue Aaron Childs. I know that was probably NIL related, but I love him as a prospect, man. I would like to see Michigan circle back. John A. Schultz says, was that the real Josiah Edmond yesterday too? I believe it was. I believe they were both on the show. David Petering says, "Hey EJ, great work. Feel like the buzz was the 24 class was going to be huge. Feels a bit underwhelming. And now they are saying the 25 class will be great. Will it? Well, there are a couple different things that could make it great. Yeah, it definitely has the potential to be great. One, I think the 2025 recruiting class is stronger nationally than the 2024 recruiting class. With the exception of a couple positions, I mentioned tight end is super weak in 25. But across the board, I like the talent more in 25. So the talent's there. Number two, I mean, Michigan's going to win on the field again, so that's not going to be a problem. Three, I think if they land Bryce Underwood, obviously that would be huge. Unlike Jaden Davis, I think he would be a really vocal leader for the class. I think he would attract top level wide receivers. I think that was the expectation when Michigan landed Jaden Davis, right? Was, oh, we got this star quarterback. Suddenly receivers are going to flock to us and he's going to be this vocal leader. And that hasn't really happened. I mean, Michigan missed on his teammate Jordan Shipp. He hasn't attracted top wide receivers, and he hasn't really been a vocal guy. I think Bryce Underwood's the opposite. I think Bryce Underwood's a magnetic guy that people gravitate towards. He's a familiar face on the 7-on-7 circuit, playing with Sound Mind Sound Body's Max X team. He constantly sees recruits across the country. I know a lot of top receivers really like him. He had a chance to spend time with top targets like Khalid Lockett and Andrew Marsh at the barbecue at the Big House. So I think Bryce Underwood is your vocal guy and is the guy that would attract big time talent, not only at the wide receiver position, but across the board. And lastly, and most importantly, is NIL. Just having a plan in place to attack on the recruiting trail. You don't necessarily have to do pay for play. You don't have to turn into Miami or Texas A&M or Oregon or these other schools that are in the same boat. But just having a structured, more organized plan for NIL and having something concrete that you can sell to recruits, I think would make a big difference. Um, Butter XO says, who are the edge rushers that Michigan is leading for in the 2025 recruiting class? So the edge rushers Michigan's leading for, um, I'm not sure they have an early lead with really any top edge rushers. I think they're going to be a little bit more selective. This could be a smaller class, just because Michigan has a pretty big group if everybody stays committed this cycle. But some guys that I will say are at the top of the board. It starts off with Ari Watford, who's here in my backyard out of Norfolk, Virginia. He's a top 20 player nationally. He's a guy that Michigan's really turned up the heat for. They're trying to become a major player for Watford. He has not visited campus, but Michigan did offer him super early. They are trying to get him on campus at some point this fall. Jesse Minter made his way down to Norfolk here during the spring evaluation period and stopped by to see Watford. So he's definitely a guy to know, and definitely a guy I'm really high on as well. As you can see, he's the number 2 edge in the country and the number 20 overall recruit nationally. And if you look at the on 3 recruiting prediction machine, that's scary, man. I mean, Virginia Tech's considered the leader here, which isn't going to happen. So I think Watford is pretty laid back with the process, hasn't visited a lot of schools, which is why Virginia Tech's high up there. So I think, Watford's a guy that's going to take his time and allow schools like Michigan to become players in his recruitment. And another guy Michigan's really high on that I absolutely love as well is Zaire Mathis out of Imhotep Charter in Philadelphia. Man, he is a scary dude on the field. Part of an Imhotep defense that was arguably the best nationally in high school football last year. Really athletic pass rusher. Was supposed to visit in the summer, didn't happen. But he is looking to come for a game this fall. He's ranked as the number 8 edge and the number 60 overall recruit nationally. Um, but yeah, Zaire's one of the best edges I've seen in the 2025 class live. I saw him for a couple of games last year. He's a teammate or was a teammate of Samaj Bridgman, who signed with Michigan last cycle. So there's a tie there. He just released his top 12, and Michigan is in it. Speaking of top 12s, Bryce Davis out of Grimsley in North Carolina just released his top 12, named Michigan in it. He's a top target as well. And another recruit that I'll mention as we move on to the next question is Adam Chauvelin. He's an on 300 prospect out of Connecticut that Michigan is really high on. He visited in June. They like him in the bigger edge spot. And then you have more project guys that Michigan could make a push for and land, like in-state guys, Xavier Newsome, Willie Fletcher, both out of Detroit King that came in for the barbecue. Michigan definitely has the lead for those guys if they push. I would expect them in the class, but like I said, they might be a little more selective with them having a bigger edge class this cycle. And one last edge that I'll mention that came to mind, Keelan Butler out of Georgia. He's only a 3-star recruit, but I know he's a prospect that the staff loves as well. We are over the 30-minute mark, so we're going to go rapid fire. If you want a last minute super chat, hit that donate button. That money goes directly to our travel budget. But let's go with some rapid fire. Mitchell Cotton says, we know Michigan's NIL situation is bad, but how bad is it? Are we in the top half of schools or the bottom half? Basically, how far back are we relative to other programs? Depends on your perspective of NIL. If you're talking about team NIL, then Michigan has a pretty decent program going on. I mean, guys are getting paid. JJ McCarthy, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, Junior Colson, all these guys have deals. They're making money. I think Michigan NIL from a team perspective is just fine. From a recruiting perspective, there is no real NIL. It's really only presenting what guys on the team are currently making. And what guys on the team are currently making, I think, is probably in the top half of college football for sure. Probably like top 5% of college football. But when it comes to recruiting, there's no upfront money being given like a Miami or an Oregon or a Texas A&M is doing. But more importantly, there's no exact plan to say, hey, here's our base salary model. Here's how much you would make for sure. There's no guaranteed money once you arrive on campus either. So from a recruiting standpoint, there just really isn't any NIL, and I think that's what's holding Michigan back on the trail. Um, can you give us any names of recruits we've lost to only because of NIL? I'm not sure I want to mention all the recruits that Michigan has lost because of NIL, but there's definitely been a handful, recruits that have turned on a dime, like a Khan Anchipong going to Miami or Aaron Childs randomly committing to Florida, but won't sit here and give an entire list. Go Blue 81 says, how are we looking with Devin Sanchez and Zaire Mathis? I just mentioned Zaire Mathis. Have to get him on campus this fall, but he's definitely high on the edge board. Devin Sanchez, 5-star cornerback out of Galena Park North Shore in Texas, one of the true powerhouses in the Houston area. Just named Michigan in his top 10. Kind of the same thing with Watford, Mathis. Like they have to get these guys on campus. Sanchez has not been to Michigan yet, so I think we'll know more once Michigan gets him to campus. He's the number 2 cornerback in the country, number 7 overall prospect nationally. And that one will probably be NIL heavy too. You see Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio State leading the way on the on3 prediction machine. John A. Schultz says, any updates with the Smith twins in Kentucky? Any more reasons to be worried or optimistic? Haven't really heard anything new. Everything's been kind of quiet. It is the dead period. So, if they keep visiting in the fall, obviously that'll be, uh, kind of thought for concern. Go Blue 81 with a comment. Thought Wingo like Davis, was hoping that would materialize. Yeah, not not going to happen. Shout out to Seth Floyd joining us late here, giving us some love and having a question. Did I get my golden dog tag from Lewis Jewelers? Of course I did. Lewis Jewelers has the best jewelry in the state of Michigan. They are running a 50% off blowout sale. Make sure to head over to Lewis Jewelers in Ann Arbor and support your local humane society. We are all about supporting cats on this show, so make sure to get your dog tag or some earrings and support your local cats and other animals. Last question comes from Parker Rost, and he says, if we can't land Bryce and Underwood, any other quarterbacks we could land for the class of 2025? I think next in line would definitely be Ryan Montgomery out of Findlay, Ohio, 4-star prospect. He's been to campus so many times, including for the barbecue at the big house. I think Michigan's going to wait and see what Bryce Underwood does. After all, he is making the decision relatively early, that commitment coming in January, so they can afford to wait. I don't think it's going to be a Jaden Davis situation where it's like, oh, December, then January, then February. Like Bryce has a date set. It's early January. So, if Michigan lands Bryce, that's obviously amazing. If they miss on Bryce, then they'll have ample time to pivot and move over to different quarterbacks. And Ryan Montgomery would be a guy. His brother plays at Ohio State, which is why Ohio State is the leader there. But remember, Ohio State already has its quarterback commit in Tavian St. Clair. So the door's open for Michigan to make a move with Ryan Montgomery. I think he, again, would be next in line. And, just a few other names to know. Husan Longstreet out of California made a visit in late May. He's a guy the staff really likes. Bear Bachmeyer out of California as well. Is a prospect that's talked about visiting Michigan. So, Kirk Campbell's keeping in contact with other guys, but right now it's full steam ahead on Bryce Underwood while keeping other guys warm. Kirk Campbell's not going to make the same mistake as Matt Weiss did. He's not going to be an all your eggs in one basket type of guy. Yeah, he's going to make Bryce feel like the priority. They're not going to take commitments from other guys until Bryce makes a decision, but he's going to keep in contact with other recruits, including Montgomery, Bachmeyer, Longstreet. So he'll have some other options for sure. And that was our last question from Parker Roast. Shout out to everybody that joined tonight. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, also subscribe to the Wolverine.com for $99.99 for a year, $9.99 for a month. Also, quick housekeeping note, I will be on vacation next week. There will not be any recruiting YouTube shows on Tuesday or Wednesday. I am moving and am taking my paid time off to do that, which kind of sucks. But yeah, it's kind of the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. So no shows next week. We'll be back the following week after I go to my first high school game. Man, high school football starts August 18th, so I'm excited. But as always, guys, thank you guys for joining, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.